Welcome to taking care of your instrument and the parts of the cello. So we're going to start with the bow first. Make sure that after every practice you loosen the bow enough so that the hair is loose and limp, so it just kind of relaxes. It's kind of like elastic. The hair will stretch out, and if you stretch it too much and keep it stretched out, it will lose its elasticity. And there's only a certain length that the frog can go to keep the bow tight. So make sure that you're loosening it each night after you are done playing. Now to tighten it, you want to tighten it, and this is where you're going to watch. You're going to watch right here in the middle of the bow. You're going to watch for that bow hair as I'm tightening it here. It's going to get tighter and tighter, and you're noticing that the stick will start to straighten and the hair will get tight, and there will be more and more space as I tighten a little bit more between the stick and the hair. Now I'm going to over tighten it, which is like this. You can see here how the stick is very, very straight, and when I go to play my cello, it's going to feel like there's too much pressure to bring the bow to the stick. So we want it to be moderate. We don't want to be too loose, neither too tight. You want to maintain a slight bend to the stick. So if you can see here, there's still a bend to the stick. And when I put my bow to the cello, I can still press the wood to the hairs if I try hard enough. Now, typically when we play, we're not going to be bearing down like that. So all we need is enough tension so that when we play, the wood does not hit the hairs. It's kind of the feeling that you want is enough give but strong in that. So if you over tighten it, it'll feel like a trampoline where you put the pressure down and the bow just bounces out of the string. And we want the bow to lay in the string, creating a really beautiful sound as we go. Okay, so that's how you take care of your bow, tightening it just a few times, loosening it a few times. And all the students know how to take apart their bow, which is fine, just it's not something you want to do every day because it can dry out the oils that lubricate it and move it back and forth. Plus, you always leave it open for damage when you do that. So, then heading to the cello, a lot of my students have asked, what do we do with the rag that comes with the cello? So, the rosin that we put on the bow, we demonstrated that in class. You can use the rosin, you can do big long strips with it, you can just do little short going back and forth with it. You can do it on top this way, you can turn the bow over this way and do it. And one helpful thing to not break the rosin is to put your thumb over the silver ferrule to prevent the rosin from smacking into that hard part and shattering the rosin. So you have a competition to see whose rosin can last the longest all year. You don't have to do it every day. For instance, for the rosin that I use, I will put it on maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. And then what the rosin does is it leaves the trail of white dust not only on the strings, but also on the cello. So you can use your cloth to wipe off the strings and wipe off the cello as well. Now, sometimes the rosin gets really sticky, and you can it'll give you a little squeak as you press hard to do that. That's a natural phenomenon, and it's supposed to happen. You want to feel that the bow has some grip to it and can easily produce a sound. So one of the things you want to check for is if you're not getting any sound, check to see if you have enough rosin. So I had a student who rosined his bow more than he actually practiced, and every time he would play it would be this just poof of white rosin dust that came off of his bow. Don't put that much rosin on. Okay, so we've now come to the pegs. The tuning pegs up here want to be snug in there, so if they keep falling out, if they keep loosening, they will need some maintenance by either Mr. Averill or myself. They are conically shaped, which means that you have to put some pressure to get them to squeeze into the peg box. It's not just something that you can just twist up and down, because you also have to, again, apply that pressure going in this way. I'm not going to have you tune using the pegs right now because it's very, very easy to break a string. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But keep these pegs safe. Don't let them be knocked about. The bridge is the next part. Your students, your children will tell you about how the bridge is not glued on. Never should it be glued on. And we want to protect the bridge at all costs. So whenever you see a cello lying down like this, it's very, very bad situation. You always want to keep your cello resting on its side. It's more stable to be on its side than it is on the back, because the back, it can rotate around this way because of the curvature of the back there. Once again, you may lay it down this way on the ground, and if you ever need to drag your cello, be careful not to drag it along the top part, because the top part is soft wood, and if you have a snag, you can easily snag on carpet and rip pieces of wood off. If that happens, save the wood. It can be glued on again later. But once again, if you ever have to pull it on the floor, you always want to make sure that you're tilting it towards the back wood, the back of the instrument, which is much harder wood and will not snag, and pull it this way to have it up this way. Now, you might think, oh, here's my cello. I'm just going to set it against the chair this way. So this is okay. It's not great. It can easily be knocked over by someone. You can also set it down so that the scroll is resting on the seat of the chair. Again, it's okay. But most of all, we want to watch out for the end pin. The end pin is the biggest culprit in tripping over and having it tripped over. So you want to make sure that when you're done, that the end pin comes in, and then that'll be less in the way as people are walking around. So make sure your end pin is in when it can be. Okay, a couple other things. The fine tuners down here are what control the small tunings of the strings. And then we talked about the bridge, the F-holes. Never put anything into the F-holes, but what's fun is to get a flashlight and look inside of the F-holes, because sometimes there will be the name of the maker or a label or something fancy on the inside as you go there. And we have the fingerboard, which is the board where the fingers go. That's pretty easy. When you play with the bow, you always want to make sure, here's my bridge, here's my fingerboard, that you're between the bridge and the fingerboard with the bow. Never bow up here, because there's two reasons for that. Number one, our hands have oils on them, and they will cover the strings up here. If you put the hair of your bow up in this area, it will soak up those oils. That's one of the reasons why we never touch the white part of the hair, because it will start to turn gray. It soaks up the oil, and then you won't be able to apply rosin to it because it simply won't stick. There are tiny little bristles on the natural horsehair that grab the rosin, and then they grab the string, and that's what makes it grab the string like that and make it vibrate. So if the rosin doesn't stick to it, then it's just like this sheet of plastic that can't do anything and just go whoof, whoof, like that. So avoid touching there. Avoid taking your other hand and putting it down in this area as well. So we want to keep the left hand in one place and the bow in the other, and don't mix those together. And then finally we come to the neck. The neck is one of the more fragile parts of the instrument in that it can easily snap off. The reason why I don't recommend laying it so that it's resting on the scroll here is that if something fell on it, it could easily just snap like that. In soft cases, that's another place where the cello can easily break. The final thing that I want to leave you with is the fingerboard. It looks like, oh, this looks like a nice handle. I could just easily pick up the cello and carry it like this. It's only glued on, and it can very easily come off. So never, ever, ever pick the cello up by the fingerboard and move it this way. So our students have learned left hand on the neck, right hand under this line. We call this the C bout. This is the bout here. So we put our hand here. Now, if you're holding a bow, you can keep holding the bow with the thumb against the hand and use the fingers to hold the part of the cello, and you can safely pick it up, walk around, and set it down, always with both hands. You're going to set it down with both hands. You're going to pick it up with both hands, never just with one, merely because of safety. A few final tips. Don't keep your instruments near a source of heat or a source of cold. We want to keep them as moderate as possible. For instance, if you store them in the trunk of the car, it can easily overheat and then really, really bad things happen, or in the cold as well. So the wood is able to contract and expand during heat and cold, and the more it contracts and expands and contracts and expands, the more it opens up on the seams and can actually cause cracks in the cello. So we want to keep the cello as, once again, as moderate as possible. Away, if you have a black case, making sure that it's not in direct sunlight, especially in a car, because that can get really, really, really hot. Or even in your home, avoiding things like keeping it cello out of its case near an air conditioning duct can also do bad things with it as well. So any questions, please let me know, and enjoy your cello.